Good morning. I hope everything's going well in your world today and that this is just the beginning of an amazing week for you. I want to think with you today about one of the great promises that God gives us. It's really recorded in the book of James. James said, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and does not withhold. Now, he'll go on to say, let him ask in faith, nothing doubted, for he that doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven by the wind and tossed. I got to thinking about that promise and just how tremendous it is that God would say to us, if you lack wisdom, just ask. Ask of me, believing, and I'll give you that wisdom. Now, there's a great difference between wisdom and knowledge, but I have to study to know, but I can ask God, and He blesses me with wisdom. I got to thinking about the story of Solomon. When Solomon became the king, you remember, and he was still a young man. David, his father, died as an old man, and in the last days of his life, he had put Solomon on the throne. And God speaks to Solomon and asks him, Solomon, what do you want? I'll give you whatever you ask. And Solomon said, I'm just a child, and I don't know how to lead these people, and I pray for wisdom. And God was so pleased that he would ask for wisdom and not power and wealth and all of those kinds of things, that he said, I'm going to give you the wisdom you've asked for, but I'll give you all of these other things to go along with it. And Solomon became known as the wisest of men. So much so that the Queen of Sheba was recorded as bringing all kinds of gifts to him, tons of money, and just wanting to visit with him and ask him questions. And after she had spent time with him and asked all of the questions she had on her mind, and he had answered them, she said about him, I'd heard about your wisdom, but I just could not believe it. But now I know that the half has never yet been told. One of the greatest stories of Solomon's use of that wisdom is in 1 Kings chapter 3, when it tells about some women coming before Solomon and asking for help. They were both prostitutes, and one of them had a baby, and 3 days later the other one had a baby. And while those children were still very small, one of them had rolled over in the night on her baby and smothered it. It died. And during the night, with that baby dead, she had gotten up and taken that dead baby and laid it at the side of the other woman and taken her baby that was alive and pretended that it was hers. And now they've come before Solomon saying, well, what shall we do? Both of them claim this is their child and the dead one was the other one. So how do you solve it? And Solomon's solution was, well, let's take a sword and cut the baby in two and give half to each of them. Now, that wasn't really what he intended to do, but it would solve the problem. Think about what happened. What happened was that the woman who was the real mother began to cry and to say, no, give her the baby. Don't take that child's life. And the other one whose baby had died said, well, go ahead and do it. Just cut it in half and give me half and her half. We'll both be the same then. And Solomon said, oh, don't take the baby's life. Give it to that one. That's the real mother, the one that didn't want his life to be taken. He used great wisdom. But here's the sad thing. Solomon, given the greatest wisdom of anybody by the hand of God, also made some of the dumbest mistakes anyone ever made. He was one that very quickly began to marry all kinds of daughters of Pharaoh, of this king, of that king, to try to make peace. He would end up with over 300 wives and 600 concubines. And they would take his heart away from God. And he would go and worship the idols along with them. He actually became, to begin, one of the greatest leaders Israel ever had, and at the end, one that was almost despised by the people because his taxes and everything had become so great, people could hardly live by it. Wisdom, good, right. But there is both a wisdom from above and a worldly wisdom that's not very wise at all. I need to be sure I'm getting the wisdom that comes from God, and not just worldly wisdom that can make me lots of money and maybe get me a lot of power, but may do some of the dumbest things that could ever be done.